Rick Grenell is joining us right now.
Yeah, Rick, I think obviously we got the negotiations going on between Wendy Sherman on the United States side and then the Deputy Foreign Minister for Russia over the situation in Ukraine and some of the other areas in that region. Now, one of the questions that is being asked, and I think this is one that we all want to know the answer to, is what happens over there? Why should Americans care? I mean, because there are people who are saying, well, this is their regional problem. This isn't a U.S. problem. How do you answer that?
Look, I think that's a fair point, right? We certainly don't want to be dragged into wars. The America First idea is to say, what is our interest? How are Americans impacted by these decisions? And I think that the reality is that this is in Europe's neighborhood. But unfortunately, we've been pushed into this corner where we have really bad choices. And that's one of the things that I think Donald Trump gave us with an America First agenda, which was the ability to not get put into the corner where Russia is on the border of a European country. We've already seen what they've done with Crimea because and look, this goes back, Jay, to the fact that there wasn't a credible threat of military action from the Biden team. There was a credible threat from Trump. And so you have to ask yourself, why is it that North Korea and China and Russia begin to test the Biden administration in ways they never tested Trump? And the answer goes to the fact of what world leaders have said to me personally, which is, quote, we just always didn't know what Donald Trump was going to do, so we had to wait. And therein lies the credible threat of military action.
One of the issues that comes up, and I'm going to play this sound, is Vladimir Putin trying to reestablish basically a Soviet Union. Take a listen. This is Jake Tapper interviewing the Secretary of State.
Former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta said a few years ago that what he believes drives Putin is a desire to restore the old Soviet Union. Do you agree?
I think that's right. I think that's one of President Putin's objectives, and it is to re-exert a sphere of influence over countries that previously were part of the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. And as we've said, that's unacceptable. We can't go back to a world of spheres of influence. That was a recipe for instability, a recipe for conflict, a recipe that led to world wars.
And Rick, so that sounds tough. I mean, that sounds like we're not going to allow this. We don't want this to happen. Meanwhile, President Biden shuts down the pipeline here, removes the sanctions on the Russians for the pipeline there, and then we're trying to talk tough at the same time, and it doesn't work.
Look, talking tough after a series of weak decisions is ridiculous. I mean, here Blinken is talking tough when he's been put in the corner, but what has he been doing over the last 9 months? He hasn't been talking tough. He's been acting weak. And that's the whole problem that I have when people say in a very real and right way, which is, why is this current crisis in Ukraine our problem? It's our problem because the United States has allowed themselves over the last year to have Russia bully into Europe because we've been ignoring the issue, just like Obama did around Ukraine, just like Obama did around Syria, right? When you show weakness, don't be surprised that you're in a corner having to choose between two bad decisions. And that's why I think we get charged up, we get angry because of the slippery slope, Jay, because what does this mean next year? Where are we showing such weakness that our enemies are organizing and others are organizing against us, so that next year we're going to find ourselves into a world crisis mess, all because right now we're acting weak? And let me just finish by saying this. Here's an act of weakness that we're doing right now. Sending Wendy Sherman in to negotiate. I mean, come on. How many times do we have to learn that she's a terrible negotiator? She negotiated with the North Koreans and got outmaneuvered. They took the food aid that she offered and didn't do a single thing that she said that they were going to do. Then she was the lead on Syria. She was the lead on Crimea with Russia. I mean, every single time we put her in an Iran negotiation, she is the weakest negotiator possible. She cares too much what the other side thinks of her. And so the idea that Wendy Sherman is the tip of the spear for us, I fear that we are sending another message of weakness.
To me, it's shocking. I call it's like Obama 2.0. It's like they got promoted in this administration, and it makes it worse. But this is part of the problem. These are the people that are doing negotiation. Colonel Smith has a question for you, Rick.
I'm not optimistic, Rick, that the outcome of these talks that begin in Geneva are going to have a good outcome. But Putin has presented a draft agreement, and in that he says we can't have any NATO troops in any country previous to what we had in 1997, and that basically he's going to direct NATO deployments. I think he knows that is a non-starter, and that he really is not sincere. He's probably using this as a pretext to say, I will go ahead and invade Ukraine anyway. How serious do you think this Russian blueprint is? And is it simply a pretext for invasion?
Yeah, look, this is another frustration because we've allowed ourselves to get in the situation where it's a bad decision and a worse decision. And now we have to decide and give, foreign policy critics have to give their opinion on these two issues. And the reality is I have to start the answer by saying I never would have allowed us to be in this position over the last 9 months. I wouldn't have given Russia all the weak signs and the pipeline. And so, it's infuriating that we're in this position of two terrible decisions. But let me just answer the question, and that I think Russia and Putin are very real about jamming us because they believe that Biden is weak. So I do believe an invasion is a very real possibility. I believe that their alternative or ultimatum that we have to choose between backing down or fighting with them because we're too close to former Soviet states and that they want to have their glory days back. I think that's really real. But again, we shouldn't have to be in the position of negotiating at NATO to back down because Putin is saying, I'm going to start a war if you continue this march. I don't want to stick Russia in the eye. I don't think that NATO needs to be doing that, but NATO exists to make sure that Russia doesn't rise. And we need to be able to make tough decisions on the climb so that when we get to the top, we're not faced with two terrible decisions like we are today.
All right, this is just out just now, and this is coming from the New York Times. It says, quote, after nearly 8 hours of intense talks, the U.S. pushed back on demands it said were non-starters, while Russia said there was no reason to fear an escalation of tensions with Ukraine. And then Russian officials said that they told their American counterparts that they had no plans to invade Ukraine in a series of talks that lasted nearly 8 hours. There's no reason to fear some kind of escalatory scenario.
So look the other way. Don't look here. Just look away.
Exactly.
Look away. We're fine. We're fine. We're fine.
Yeah. And they'll say this is the problem is they'll say this is a success. Rick, thank you for being with us.